child? Stay there.
He had buried her name so deep, it took a single phone call at 2:47 a.m. to bring it back up. Seo Jun was still awake when the phone rang. Not because something was wrong, because something was always wrong in his world, and a man in his position learned to stop treating nighttime as rest. He simply existed in whatever hour found him, alert in the way that had become indistinguishable from his personality. The phone rang once. He didn't move. It rang again. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Most unknown numbers at this hour were either wrong turns or manufactured emergencies, both of which had a way of resolving themselves without his involvement. He had trained himself years ago to let things unfold before he stepped into them. But the call didn't stop. He picked up on the fourth ring. Yes. The word was all he offered. No greeting, no name, just the quiet signal that he was there and listening, which was more than most people got from him without an appointment. The voice on the other end was a woman's. Young, strained, as though she had rehearsed what she was about to say, and was now watching the rehearsal fall apart in real time. "Is this Seo Jun? Please, you need to come. It's Immani Cole." He was standing before he realized he'd moved. There were names a man could file away cleanly. Exes, former associates, old disappointments. And then there were names that resisted that kind of tidiness. Names that lived just beneath the surface of a well-ordered life, quiet and waiting. Immani Cole was the second kind. What about her? His voice stayed level. But something beneath it changed, a shift so internal that no one would have heard it unless they knew exactly what to listen for. "She's been in an accident, Seoul Central Hospital. She's unconscious and—" The woman faltered. Seo Jun noticed. He always noticed. "And?" he said. A pause. Small, unavoidable. "There's a child." He stayed very still. The words were simple enough, 3 syllables, but they didn't land the way ordinary information did. They moved slowly, like something his mind resisted absorbing too quickly. "A child," he repeated. "Yes. Before she passed out, she kept asking for you. She gave me your number. She said she made me promise to call." Seo Jun set down the glass he hadn't realized was still in his hand. "Stay there." He ended the call. What followed was not panic. It was precision. His jacket, his keys, his phone. The gun settled into place without ceremony, an old habit that had long stopped feeling like a decision. By the time he stepped outside, the car was already waiting. It always was. Seoul at 3 in the morning moved the way all great cities did at that hour. Restless, half awake, indifferent to the particular urgency of any one person passing through it. Seo Jun watched the city streak past the window without really seeing it. His focus had narrowed to a single point. 8 months. That was how long it had been since Immani Cole left his life. Not with an explosion, with a silence. One day she was there. The next, she had arranged her absence so carefully that it left no rough edges to hold on to. No confrontation, no final argument. Just a distance that appeared in her eyes before it appeared in her actions. As though she had already decided something he hadn't been told about. He had let her go. That, more than her leaving, had never quite settled. He remembered the last time he saw her with an uncomfortable clarity, not because it had been dramatic, but because of the opposite. She had looked at him with an expression he couldn't name at the time, something between grief and resolution. He had told himself it was temporary. He had been wrong. And now, 8 months later, She was asking for him from a hospital bed. The building appeared ahead, its sterile exterior lit against the dark. Seo Jun stepped out of the car and walked through the entrance. The lobby adjusted around him in the way places always did, not loudly, not dramatically. Conversations softened. People shifted. Recognition moved through the space without announcement, carried in the small adjustments of people who understood what it meant when a man walked into a room and the room changed temperature. At the reception desk, a young woman looked up and lost her professional composure by exactly 1 degree. "Immani Cole?" he said. She typed quickly. "3rd floor, emergency wing." He moved without waiting for anything further. The hallway on the 3rd floor was quieter, the kind of quiet that hospitals manufactured after midnight. Not peaceful, just controlled. Room 312 was easy enough to find. What he hadn't expected was the child sitting outside it. She was small, perhaps 5 or 6, seated on the bench with her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her posture was deliberate, the kind children develop when they've spent time around adults who make them feel that being too much trouble is a real risk. She wasn't crying, she was watching. When her gaze lifted to meet his, it didn't waver. "You're Seo Jun," she said, no question in it. He stopped. Up close, the familiarity was harder to dismiss. It wasn't just her features, though there was something there, something in the structure of her face, in the particular steadiness of her gaze. It was the way she looked at him, directly, without flinching. The way he had looked at people his entire life, and rarely found anyone looking back. "Where is your mother?" he asked. She nodded at the door. "In there." A pause. "She said you would come." "She said that?" "She said you always come when it matters." He studied her more carefully now. "What's your name?" "Zara." He repeated it silently, the way he committed things to memory. Not because he chose to, but because certain things simply refused to leave. "And your father?" he asked. He kept his voice even. Zara tilted her head slightly, the way children do when they're not answering from what they've been told, but from what they've decided. "I think it's you." The realization didn't announce itself. It assembled, piece by piece, moving from the edge of his awareness toward the center of it, until there was no longer any pretending it wasn't there. Seo Jun looked at her. "How old are you?" "5." "5." The timeline moved through his mind without permission. The dates, the silence, the months before she left, when something in her had shifted without explanation. The morning he woke up and understood, too late, that she had already gone. 5 years ago, Immani Cole had been pregnant, and she had left without telling him. The door to room 312 opened. A nurse stepped out, glanced between them, and started to ask a question. "Yes," Seo Jun said, before she could finish it. She blinked. "She's stable, but still unconscious. We've been trying to reach family. I'm here." The nurse stepped aside. He paused before entering. His hand came to rest briefly on Zara's shoulder, a small gesture that felt strange only after it had already happened. "Stay here?" he said. She nodded, watching him with those eyes that were far too familiar. Inside, the room was small and quiet in the way hospitals enforced quiet. The beeping of machines, the steady rhythm of a life being measured rather than lived. Immani Cole lay against the white pillow, her face pale, one side lightly bruised from the accident. Her hands folded at her sides, as though even unconscious she was trying to take up the least possible space. Seo Jun stood at the doorway for a moment. He had imagined seeing her again, in the abstract way that a man imagines things he tells himself he doesn't want. He had never imagined it like this. Not silent, not without choice, not with a child outside who had his eyes. He crossed the room and stood beside the bed. The machines marked time around him. He looked at her face, at the familiar lines of it, at the faint exhaustion that lived there even in unconsciousness. And for a moment, the careful distance he had maintained over 8 months felt very thin. He sat down beside her and placed his hand over hers. Warm, still real. A glance at the door showed Zara exactly where he'd left her, watching through the narrow window. "I'm here," he said quietly. The words felt strange, but necessary, and for a man who prided himself on knowing exactly what everything meant, the fact that he couldn't explain why he meant them unsettled him more than he was willing to examine. Immani did not wake that night. The doctors used words like stable and monitoring and concussion, and Seo Jun absorbed them all with the same blank exterior he brought to any briefing. But stable was not the same as safe. Stable meant holding. It meant suspended. He returned to the hallway. Zara was still on the bench, her small feet dangling above the floor, awake despite the hour. She looked up when she heard him. "Is she okay?" He lowered himself onto the bench beside her, leaving enough space that she wouldn't feel crowded. He had negotiated with men who lied as naturally as breathing. He had made decisions that altered the lives of people he would never meet. But this child, this small, composed, too serious child, made him choose his words more carefully than any of them. "She's stable," he said. "The doctors are watching her closely." Zara absorbed that. Stable means not dying? His chest tightened. It means she's still here. For the first time, Zara looked away. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress, once, before she forced them still. "Were you with her?" he asked. "When it happened?" She nodded. "We were in a taxi. She said we were going somewhere safe." Seo Jun went very still. Somewhere safe. "Did she say from what?" Zara hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she knew enough to be afraid. "You can tell me," he said, quieter. She looked back at him. She said if anything happened, I should remember your name. He let that sit for a moment. "How long has she been telling you my name?" "Always." Something inside him tightened in a way that had nothing to do with strategy. "Always," he repeated. "She said you were important, but she didn't say I could call you." "Why not?" Zara looked toward the door of Immani's room. "Because she said sometimes love is complicated." The words were too old for a 5-year-old's mouth. Seo Jun looked at the floor, jaw tightening once before he let it go. Immani had told their daughter about him. Not enough to bring him into their lives, but enough that his name had lived there all along, carried between memory and warning. He didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. Probably both. "Did she ever say I was your father?" he asked. Zara considered this. "She never said it like that." "Then why do you think I am?" She looked directly at him. "Because she cries when she looks at your picture." He turned his face slightly away from her. Not enough to hide, enough to recover. Immani had kept a picture. After everything, after leaving, after building an entire separate life, she had kept a picture, and she cried when she looked at it, and a 5-year-old child had been watching. "She still has a picture," he said. Not a question. "In the blue book. She thinks I don't know." Zara paused. "But I know." "Are you hungry?" he asked. Zara blinked. "A little." Then we'll get you something. I don't want to leave, Mommy. You won't have to. He stood, took out his phone, sent one message. Within minutes, one of his men arrived at the end of the corridor carrying a small paper bag and warm drinks. He stopped several steps away, bowed his head, set the food on the nearby table, and disappeared without a word. Zara watched the exchange with open curiosity. Does everyone listen to you? Seo Jun opened the bag and handed her a small sandwich. Not everyone, but most people? Enough? She accepted this and ate in silence. He sat beside her, aware of an unfamiliar sensation he didn't have a clean name for. The particular weight of existing in the same space as someone who was yours, who you had never known, who was carrying your absence without knowing what they had lost. Zara finished half the sandwich before speaking again. Are you mad at Mommy? The question was soft, but not innocent. Children understood more than adults gave them credit for. They collected fragments and built worlds from them. Seo Jun looked toward Immani's room. I don't know yet. Please don't shout at her when she wakes up. She doesn't like shouting. A beat. She acts strong, but she gets quiet after. The words told him more than they were meant to. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I won't shout. Even if you're angry. Even then. Zara studied him, measuring the promise. Then her shoulders lowered, a small release that she probably didn't realize she had given him. She missed you, she said. He didn't answer. Because if he did, he would ask why Immani had never come back. And Zara was not the person who should have to answer that. The doctor found him a short time later. She was calm, professional, with the practiced expression of someone accustomed to delivering information without showing too much of their own reaction to it. She confirmed what the nurse had already said. Stable, concussion, bruising, no internal bleeding, but still unconscious, still being monitored through the morning. Then she said something else. When she was brought in, she was holding a bag. She wouldn't let go of it until she lost consciousness. Seo Jun's attention sharpened. What bag? Blue leather. It's with her belongings. We kept it safe. He looked at Zara. The child's expression shifted immediately. She knew that bag. A few minutes later, it was placed in his hands. Blue leather, worn at the edges. He recognized it before he could stop himself. He had bought it for Immani years ago in Milan, after she admired it in a shop window and insisted it was too expensive. He had had it delivered to their hotel before dinner without telling her. She had pretended to be surprised and hadn't quite managed it. She had kept it. He opened the bag. A wallet, a small perfume bottle, crayons, a child's hair tie, and beneath all of it, a folded envelope. His name was written across the front. Seo Jun. His handwriting. No, her handwriting. His name, in her hand. Zara stepped closer. Mommy wrote that yesterday. She said if something happened, you had to read it. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Not long, but enough. Seo Jun. If this reaches you, then I waited too long. I know you will be angry. You have the right to be. I should have told you about Zara years ago. And there is no version of the truth that makes that choice clean. But I need you to know this first. I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I believed staying would destroy us both. There are things I need to explain. Things I should have said before fear made the decision for me. Someone has been watching us. Someone knows about Zara. I thought I could keep her hidden, but I was wrong. If anything happens to me, protect her. Please. Whatever you believe about me, believe this. She is innocent, and she is yours. Immani. Seo Jun stood very still. He read the letter once. Then he folded it slowly and placed it back in the envelope. He lowered himself to Zara's eye level. Zara. She looked at him. Yes. Has anyone been following you and your mother? Her small face tightened. That was all the answer he needed, but he waited. There was a man, she said quietly. Mommy said not to look at him. Where did you see him? Outside our apartment, then at my school, then today, before the taxi. His blood turned cold. Did your mother know? Zara nodded. That's why we were leaving. Seo Jun looked toward Immani's room. The accident no longer looked like an accident. He rose slowly, the letter in his coat pocket, his mind already moving ahead of itself. A few hours ago, Immani Cole had been his past. A woman he had lost. A wound he had refused to examine. Now she was lying unconscious behind a closed door, and a child with his eyes was standing beside him, carrying 5 years of silence that neither of them had chosen. He placed his hand on Zara's shoulder. This time it didn't feel strange at all. You and your mother are coming with me when she wakes up, he said. Zara looked up. Somewhere safe? He looked at the hospital entrance, through the glass, at Seoul still moving as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Yes, he said. Somewhere safe. Immani woke just before dawn. The nurse found Seo Jun before the monitors even registered the shift, because he had been watching for it all night. He was at the door before she finished saying the words. Zara was faster. She slipped past him and through the door, quiet and urgent all at once. By the time Seo Jun entered, Immani had already turned her head toward her daughter, and whatever pain she was carrying became secondary to the expression on her face. My baby, she breathed. Zara climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed. She was trying to be gentle and failing because she was still 5 years old and needed her mother more than she understood caution. Immani winced, but wrapped one arm around her immediately. I'm okay. I'm here. I'm here. You scared me. I know. I'm so sorry. Seo Jun stood in the doorway and gave them the moment. Then Immani lifted her eyes and saw him. The room changed, not loudly, but he felt it. The breath she held, the tightening of her hand against Zara's back, the flood of recognition and guilt and relief crossing her face faster than she could contain it. Seo Jun. His name in her voice sounded different now, not like memory, like consequence. He stepped closer. You asked for me. I didn't know if you would come. He held her gaze. I came. She understood what he was not saying. Her eyes filled, but she held the tears back with a restraint he recognized too well. She had always been stronger than she appeared. Strong enough to leave. Strong enough, apparently, to raise his child alone. Zara, Immani said softly, smoothing her daughter's curls. Can you sit with the nurse for a few minutes? Zara looked between them. Are you going to fight? No, Immani said quickly. No, Seo Jun said, quieter. Zara studied both answers. Then she nodded, allowed the nurse to guide her out, and the door closed behind her. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, crowded with everything that had been left unsaid for years. Immani looked down at her hands. You read the letter? Yes. Her eyes closed briefly. I was going to tell you everything, she said. I just never found the beginning. Begin with why, he said. She took a careful breath. When I found out I was pregnant, things between us were already fracturing. You were disappearing for days. taking calls you wouldn't explain, coming home with blood on your cuffs and silence in your mouth. She looked at him steadily. I loved you, but I was watching you from a distance I didn't know how to cross, and then someone sent me photos. His gaze sharpened. What photos? Of you with another woman. The old wound. He had suspected something like this for years. Some lie she had been handed that she hadn't been able to disprove. He hadn't known the shape of it until now. There was no woman, he said. I know that now. At the time, they looked real, Seo Jun. Her voice held steady, but barely. They came from your private number, hotel records, messages. Everything was there. Someone had built it carefully. He went quiet in a particular way, not hurt, not defensive, thinking. Someone had not simply lied to her. Someone had engineered the lie. Who sent them? I don't know. I tried to trace it afterward, but it led nowhere. By then I was pregnant. Alone, and convinced that staying near you would put the baby in danger. He looked away, jaw tightening once. So you disappeared. I survived, she corrected, and for the first time there was fire in her voice. Maybe it was the worst decision I ever made, but at the time, I thought I was protecting her. He understood it. That was the worst part. He understood the logic, even as the loss of 5 years sat in his chest like something he had no clean word for. You should have told me, he said. I know. You don't, he said, and now the control in his voice tightened. You don't know what it is to sit outside that door and hear a 5-year-old tell you she thinks she belongs to you. You don't know what it is to realize you missed the first 5 years of your child's life in a single sentence. Immani's tears finally spilled. I know I took something from you. You took more than something. I know. The room went quiet. Then she wiped her tears with the back of her hand, almost impatiently, as though she hated needing to cry in front of him. But someone found us, she said. That's why I wrote the letter. That's why we were leaving. Seo Jun's anger collapsed inward, replaced by something colder. Zara told me about the man. Immani's face changed. She saw him at the apartment, at school, the day of the accident. Immani pressed a hand to her mouth. I thought I was hiding it from her. She knows more than you think. She always has. She always has, Immani whispered, and something in her expression broke open quietly. Seo Jun stepped closer. Who is he? I don't know his name. I only saw him clearly twice. Korean, mid-40s. Scar near his left eyebrow. He never approached us, but he made sure I saw him. Seo Jun went still. The description alone wasn't enough to confirm a name, but it was enough to disturb him in a specific way. The way that happened when instinct and information arrived at the same place at the same time. Did he contact you? 3 days ago, an envelope was left at Zara's school. What was inside? Immani looked at him, and the fear she had been containing showed itself fully. A photo of her on the playground, and a note. She paused. It said, "He has a right to know what you stole from him." Seo Jun absorbed the words in silence, not because they confused him, because they clarified everything. This was not random. This was not an ex-employee settling old scores through blunt force. Whoever this was had been patient. They had known about Zara. They had known she was his. They had waited until the child was old enough to matter before using her. You know who it is, Immani said. I know who it might be. Seo Jun, I'm moving you today. Her expression hardened. No. He looked at her. No. she repeated. I am grateful you're here, but you don't get to walk back into our lives and start making decisions as if I haven't spent 5 years making them alone. This is about safety, and I've kept her safe until now. Until someone forced your taxi off the road. The words landed without apology, because they were true. Immani looked away. He softened, though not completely. I'm not here to punish you, he said. I know you made choices that seemed right with what you had. But whoever did this, whoever built that lie, whoever followed you, whoever put Zara's photo in an envelope, they counted on the distance between us protecting them. He let that settle. That distance is gone. For the first time since waking, Immani fully absorbed the scale of what had changed. Not just that he knew, not just that he had come, but that Seo Jun, once made aware of a threat, did not return to ignorance. A knock came before she could respond. The nurse returned with Zara, who was holding a juice box and a packet of crackers as if they were offerings. Her face brightened when she saw Immani sitting up. They had apple juice. Immani smiled through exhaustion. Your favorite. Zara climbed carefully onto the bed again and then looked at Seo Jun. Are you still mad? Immani closed her eyes briefly. Seo Jun crouched to Zara's eye level. I'm not mad at you, he said. I know. I mean, at Mommy. He held the child's gaze. He had told himself he would be honest with her, even when the honesty was complicated. I'm hurt, he said, and I have a lot of questions, but I'm here. Zara nodded, accepting the distinction in the way only children can, without needing it wrapped in something easier. Are we going somewhere safe? Immani looked at him. Seo Jun didn't look away from Zara. Yes. Immani, he said, you don't have to trust everything about me today. I understand that. But trust that I will protect her. He held her gaze. That is the one thing I am not uncertain about. That was the argument she had no answer for. Whatever she feared about Seo Jun, whatever had stood between them, she had never doubted that he protected the things he chose to protect with everything in him. And Zara was his. Finally, Immani nodded. Where? She asked. A private estate outside the city, secure, not a safe house. She studied him. Then what? A home, he said. The word surprised both of them. He looked away first. Immani was quiet for a moment. You've had it for years. Yes. Why? A pause. For a life I never got to have. Before she could respond, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. One message. The taxi driver is dead. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Immani had seen his expression change. What is it? We leave sooner than I thought. She tightened her arm around Zara. Seo Jun moved to the door and spoke to the guard outside in Korean. Quiet. Precise. Within minutes, the hallway was shifting with the kind of coordinated movement that looked like nothing to people who didn't know what to look for. Immani watched it. And something in her expression changed. She had not escaped Seo Jun's world. She had only been unprotected from it. Leaving the hospital happened quietly. There was no urgency visible from the outside, just a woman in a wheelchair, a small child walking close beside her, and a man who moved through spaces as if they had already arranged themselves around him. They were outside and in the car before the city around them registered that anything had changed. The drive was long enough for silence to settle. Zara leaned against Immani, awake but quieter now, her eyes moving between them in small, careful glances. Every few minutes, she looked at Seo Jun, not with suspicion, but with the focused attention of someone trying to understand a person before asking the questions she wasn't sure she was allowed to ask. Immani noticed. She also noticed how he gave Zara space, how he didn't press for anything, how he answered her questions directly without performing warmth he hadn't yet earned. "You haven't asked me anything," she said. Seo Jun kept his gaze forward. "I will. When? When it doesn't feel like I'm taking answers from you." Zara stirred slightly without opening her eyes. "Is he staying?" "Yes," Seo Jun said. No hesitation. No qualifier. Zara settled more comfortably against Immani, as though the answer was all she needed. Immani exhaled slowly. "You always answer like that." "Like what?" "Like there's no other option." Seo Jun didn't respond, because in his mind, there wasn't. The estate appeared as the city fell away behind them. It wasn't what Immani had expected. There was nothing temporary about it. No improvised security, no stripped-down functionality. The house was set on enough land that the distance itself became part of what protected it. And it was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with showing off, and everything to do with someone who had imagined living in it with care. She stepped out of the car and stood looking at it. "This isn't a safe house," she said. "No." "It's yours." "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." Inside, the house felt lived in, though not recently. There were signs of preference throughout it. Books, a particular arrangement of furniture, a kitchen stocked with specificity rather than convenience. It was the house of someone who had designed a life inside it, in theory, and had been waiting to inhabit it, in practice. Immani moved slowly through the space, not commenting, just noting. Then she stopped in the hallway and turned. "You planned this," she said. "For a long time." "Yes." "For what?" "For something I didn't get to have." She didn't answer that. There was nothing she could say to it that wouldn't cost her something. Zara adapted immediately, in the way children adapt to spaces that feel safe, with quiet curiosity, moving room to room, touching things, returning to check that both of them were still in the same place, then exploring again. By evening, she had mapped the whole house and settled in. After Zara fell asleep, Seo Jun stood on the terrace. The air outside was cooler than the house, and the distance from the city let him think without the city thinking back at him. Immani joined him. "You don't think it was an accident?" she said. "No." "And the driver?" "Dead." She closed her eyes briefly, but not with surprise. "I thought so." "How long has this been happening?" he asked. "Long enough that I knew we had to leave. I thought I had more time. I was wrong." "You didn't come to me." "I didn't know what coming to you would bring back into her life." A pause. "Your life is not safe, Seo Jun. You know that." He said nothing, because she wasn't wrong. "Whoever this is," he said, "they've been patient." "They waited until she was old enough to matter," Immani said, "until she was something real that could be used." He turned to look at her. "You know what that means?" "Leverage." "Yes." "And they know she's yours." "Yes." The word that followed was left unsaid by both of them, deliberately. Someone had not stumbled onto the secret of Zara's parentage. They had discovered it and waited. They had let the right amount of time pass for the child to become something worth threatening. They had found Immani when she had spent 5 years making herself unfindable. This had been constructed. A few minutes later, his lieutenant appeared with a tablet. Seo Jun followed him without a word. The footage was clear. A street. A taxi. Immani and Zara visible through the window. And behind them, a black car that never drew attention to itself. that never fell too far back, that stayed at exactly the right distance for hours before the intersection. The image paused, zoomed, a face through the lowered window, a scar near the left eyebrow. "You know him," his lieutenant said. "Yes." "Who?" Seo Jun handed the tablet back. Han Seok. The name settled between them without drama. It didn't need any. Han Seok, former associate. The kind of man who remembered everything and waited the length of time required to make what he did with that memory feel inevitable. They had parted badly, years ago, not through violence, but through the particular devastation of being outmaneuvered by someone you had underestimated. Han Seok had not forgotten. He had simply been patient. When Seo Jun returned to the terrace, Immani was where he'd left her. "Are we safe here?" she asked. "For now," he said. It wasn't reassurance. It was honesty. She seemed to understand the difference, because she didn't push for more. He was gone before she woke up. Not entirely. His men were still there, stationed at the perimeter, watching the road. But Seo Jun himself was in the car before the sun had fully risen, already moving toward the city with a clarity that came from having spent the night making a decision and arriving at it without doubt. Han Seok had made himself visible. That was not an accident. Men like Han Seok did not make mistakes that looked like accidents. It was an invitation, a signal, a challenge delivered in the language of the world they both moved through, which had never been the language of subtlety. He was not hiding. He was waiting. The location confirmed it. An abandoned industrial building on the city's east edge. Too open to be defensive. Too deliberate to be arbitrary. Seo Jun drove there without backup, not because he was careless, but because he understood that Han Seok had not come to kill him. If that had been the goal, he would have had a different conversation at a different time in a different place. This was something else. He entered the building alone. The space was wide and cool, concrete underfoot, light coming through high-set windows. It smelled of disuse. His footsteps carried further than they should have in the silence. "I was starting to think you wouldn't come." The voice came from the far side of the building. Seo Jun didn't turn immediately. "You didn't leave much room for that." Han Seok stepped into view. He was older than Seo Jun remembered. The years had settled on him in a way that made him look deliberate rather than worn. The scar near his left eyebrow was exactly where Immani had described it. Everything else about him was the same as it had always been. Composed, precise, operating from the unshakable conviction that he saw further than everyone else in the room. "You look well," Han Seok said. "You look like you still haven't learned." A faint smile. "Some things aren't meant to be learned. They're meant to be finished." The space between them was still, not fragile, decisive. "You followed her," Seo Jun said. "Yes." "For how long?" "Long enough to understand her. Long enough to know she was telling the truth when she said she never came back." A pause. "She really thought she was protecting the girl." "Why the girl?" Han Seok studied him with what might have been curiosity. "Because she's yours. That was obvious the moment I found her. She has your eyes. Your way of being still when she's watching something." He tilted his head slightly. "You never knew?" "No." "Then you understand how I felt." Seo Jun said nothing. Han Seok began to move, slow, unhurried, like a man who believed he had already determined how the conversation would end. "You took everything from me," he said, not violently. That would have been clean. "You took it with patience. You outweighted me. You positioned yourself, and you waited until I had nothing left." He stopped. "My position. My name. Everything I had built. You lost those things, Seo Jun said. I didn't take them. You made choices that cost you. Han Seok's jaw shifted slightly. Same difference. No, Seo Jun said. It isn't. The silence that followed was different from the others. It was the silence of a man who had rehearsed the next move and was deciding whether to make it. I wanted you to feel it, Han Seok said finally. Not lose something. Feel it. There's a difference. He looked at Seo Jun with something that was almost honesty. I wanted you to find out about the girl and understand exactly how quickly the things you love can disappear. You could have taken her, Seo Jun said. Yes. But you didn't. No. He was quiet for a moment, because taking her would have ended this, and I wanted this to last. Seo Jun looked at him steadily. You built the lie, he said. The photos, the messages, the hotel records. That was you. Something shifted in Han Seok's expression. You know about that. I know now. A pause. She believed it. You built it to be believed. Yes, Han Seok said. I did. He didn't offer regret. He offered accuracy. I built it carefully, and she left. And you lost 5 years. And the girl grew up without you. He tilted his head. And I want you to know that I feel it was fair. The admission was so clean that it was almost easier to be in the room with than denial would have been. Fair, Seo Jun repeated, for what you cost me. They stood in the empty building, and for a moment, nothing moved. Then Seo Jun said, I understand why you came. Han Seok waited. I understand what you lost. I understand how long you've been carrying it. And I understand that what you wanted from this wasn't death. You wanted to be witnessed. You wanted someone to understand the score you were keeping. The words landed carefully. Han Seok's expression did not open, but it changed. And I'm telling you, Seo Jun continued, that what you did to her, to them, doesn't make us even. It doesn't close the account. It just adds to it. You came here to tell me that? I came here because you wanted me to come, because leaving it unfinished would have meant leaving them unfinished too. He paused. This ends tonight. Han Seok smiled, and the smile didn't carry warmth. It never ends. It does, Seo Jun said, the moment you choose not to continue it. And if I don't make that choice? Seo Jun held his gaze. Then you'll discover what a man protects differently when he knows what he's protecting. The meaning was clear, not a threat made from anger, a fact stated plainly by someone who understood the difference between the two. Han Seok looked at him for a long moment. The calculation behind his eyes moved through its final steps, arriving at something that might have been a conclusion, or might have been the recognition of one. She doesn't know about me, he said finally. What I did. She will. Will you give her the choice to hate me? Seo Jun paused. I'll give her the truth. What she does with it is hers. Han Seok nodded once, a small nod, the kind that ended things. You won't hear from me again, he said. Seo Jun said nothing. He turned and walked out of the building, and he did not look back. Because some things ended not with a final blow, but with the decision to stop walking toward them. The drive back to the estate was quiet, not tense, not relieved. Quiet in the way that follows the closure of something that had been open too long. A wound finally sutured, a question finally answered. Seo Jun arrived back as the morning was fully settled, light spread evenly across the grounds. The kind of day that didn't know what had happened the night before. He walked through the front door. Immani was at the kitchen table, both hands around a cup of tea, looking up the moment she heard his steps. You're back, she said. Yes. And it's over. He paused in the doorway, not performing calm, actually calm. Yes. Zara appeared from the hallway, her hair loose around her face, wearing socks that were too big, because she had found a pair of his and put them on without asking. She stopped when she saw him. He waited. She walked toward him carefully, stopped just short of reaching him, and looked up. You said you would come back, she said. I did. You actually did. Yes. She looked at him for a moment longer. That same focused, measuring look she had given him from the bench outside room 312. The look that, he now understood, was simply how she existed in the world, watching, deciding, taking nothing for granted. Then she stepped forward and put her arms around him. It was brief, unannounced, not performing anything. Seo Jun didn't move at first. Then he placed one hand against her back, and that was all. And it was enough. Immani watched from the kitchen doorway, not speaking. When Zara pulled back, she looked between them with the straightforward clarity of a child who had decided something and would not be talked out of it. I'm going to put on normal socks, she announced, and disappeared back down the hallway. Seo Jun watched her go. Immani came to stand beside him. For a moment they were quiet together, not the uncomfortable quiet of people who couldn't find words, but the quieter quiet of people who were finally out of the emergency and into something that required a different kind of attention. Who was it? She asked. Han Seok? She repeated the name slowly. I don't know him. You wouldn't, but the lie he built, the photos, the messages, that was him? Immani went very still. He fabricated it. All of it, carefully. He knew enough about both of us to make it convincing. The words moved through her slowly. He watched her absorb them. The way her expression changed from surprise to understanding to something deeper. Something that was part grief and part fury, and part the particular anguish of realizing that the worst decision of your life was made on false information. I left because of a lie, she said. Yes, I kept Zara from you because someone built a lie and handed it to me. Yes. She pressed her lips together. For a moment, nothing else moved in her face. I would have stayed, she said quietly. I know. I would have... She stopped, started again. She deserved to know you, from the beginning, and I took that from her because I believed... Immani. She looked at him. You believed what you were given, he said. That's not your failure. That was his. I should have asked you. Yes, he said simply. You should have. She received the honesty without flinching. I was afraid you would deny it. I was afraid I would believe you and be wrong. And instead? I believed the evidence and left and was still wrong. She pressed her hand flat against the kitchen counter, steadying herself. I'm sorry, Seo Jun. I know, he said. I'm sorry for the years. I know. Is that enough? He looked at her for a long moment, looked at her the way he hadn't allowed himself to since she had opened her eyes in room 312. Fully, without the guard of the last few hours. It's a beginning, he said. Immani exhaled. Not with relief exactly, but with the particular release of someone who had been holding something for so long that setting it down, even briefly, required adjustment. What do we do now? She asked. He thought about it. We tell Zara the truth. About Han Seok? About everything. Not all at once. Not more than she can carry. But she's been carrying our silence for 5 years without asking for it. He paused. She deserves better than that from both of us. Immani nodded slowly. She already knows more than either of us gave her credit for. Yes, she does. A short silence. She put on your socks, Immani said. I noticed. She found them in the hall cupboard this morning and just put them on. She does that. Something soft entered her expression. She takes things that feel like security and she keeps them. Seo Jun looked toward the hallway where Zara had disappeared. She's been doing that with my name, he said quietly. Immani looked at him. What do you mean? Keeping it. You told her I was important. She held on to that the same way she held on to your socks this morning. He paused. She kept me close even when I wasn't there. Immani's eyes filled again. She let it happen this time. She asked me once, she said, why her father lived somewhere else. She was 3. I didn't know what to say, so I said the world was complicated. She shook her head slowly. She accepted that. She always accepted what I gave her, but she kept the picture. She knew which book it was in. The blue leather bag. Yes. The same bag he had bought in Milan. The same bag she had refused to let go of even as she lost consciousness. Some things, apparently, people held on to whether it made logical sense or not. That evening, they sat together in the main room, the 3 of them. No particular occasion, no conversation that had been planned. Zara was cross-legged on the floor with a stack of books from the shelf, examining each one as though she were in a library she had been given special permission to use. Immani sat on the couch, watching her. Seo Jun sat across from them, a cup of tea cooling beside him, his eyes moving between the 2 of them in a rhythm he wasn't aware of until Immani noticed it and didn't say anything. Do you live here alone? Zara asked, without looking up. Yes, Seo Jun said. Why? Because I haven't had anyone to live here with. Zara turned a page. That sounds lonely. It was. She looked up at that, surprised perhaps that he'd agreed so plainly. Then she looked back at her book. It doesn't have to be any more, she said. The simplicity of it filled the room. Immani looked at the floor. Seo Jun looked at Zara. The child had already returned to her book, as if she hadn't just said the truest thing that had been spoken in that house in years. Later, Immani stood in the doorway of the room where Zara was finally asleep. The child had lasted longer than expected, asking questions, negotiating one more book, one more glass of water, one more minute, before exhaustion finally won. Seo Jun stood beside Immani. She sleeps hard, Immani said softly. Once she goes, nothing wakes her. That's good. She didn't get it from me. A small pause. I don't think I've slept through the night in 5 years. He looked at her. That will change, he said. She turned to him, and something in his expression stopped her from arguing. You're going to tell me I'm safe now, she said. I'm going to tell you that you're not doing this alone anymore. The distinction mattered. He could see that she heard it. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Whatever this is, whatever we are now. Neither do I, he said. She seemed surprised. That's not very reassuring. No, he agreed. But it's honest. Immani looked back at Zara, at the small shape of her under the covers, one arm flung out to the side, completely surrendered to sleep. She's going to ask me questions, Immani said, about us, about what happened, about why you weren't there. What will you tell her? As much of the truth as she can use. She paused. That we loved each other, that things got complicated, that fear made me make a decision I shouldn't have made alone. And me? Immani was quiet for a moment. That you came the moment you knew. He nodded once. She turned away from the doorway and moved down the hallway. He followed slowly, and they stood in the kitchen the way people stand when the conversation they're having matters more than finding somewhere comfortable to have it. "You're still angry," she said. "I can feel it." "Yes." "At me." "Yes." He held her gaze. "I don't know what to do with it yet. But I'm not going to spend it on you or on her." "Then where?" "Somewhere it won't cause damage." Immani studied him. "That's not how anger usually works." "I know. But you think you can manage it." "I think I have to." She looked at him for a long moment. At the man she had known. At the man she had left. At the man who had appeared in a hospital corridor at 3 in the morning and hadn't left since. "There are things I don't understand about you," she said. "Things I was afraid of before. The calls you wouldn't explain. The blood I didn't ask about. The world that existed around you that I was never fully inside." "Yes," he said. "I need to understand them." "I know. If we're doing this, whatever this is, I need to know what I'm walking into." He was quiet for a moment. "It isn't clean," he said. "I won't pretend it is. There are parts of what I do that have no version that sounds acceptable. I'm not asking for acceptable. I'm asking for honest." He looked at her. "I run operations," he said. "Financial, some security. Some of it exists in places that governments would prefer not to acknowledge. I make decisions that affect people I never meet. I have made enemies by being effective." A pause. Han Seok was one of them. "Are there more?" "Fewer than there used to be." "That's not an answer." "No," he said. "There are others, not like him. Nothing with the specific shape of last night. But the world I live in doesn't empty itself of risk." Immani absorbed this. "And you think Zara is safer in that world than outside it?" "I think Zara spent 5 years outside it," he said. "And someone found her anyway." He held her gaze. "The thing that was supposed to protect her, my absence, was the thing that made her visible. That silenced her, because she had been thinking it since the hospital." "So we stay," she said. "If you choose to." She raised an eyebrow. "If?" "I told you I'm not taking control from you. I meant it." He paused. "I want you here. I want her here. But I won't make it impossible for you to leave." "What if I said I wanted to go?" He looked at her steadily. "Then I would make sure you were protected wherever you went, and I would find a way to be in her life regardless." "You've thought about this?" "Since approximately 3 o'clock this morning." A short silence. Immani exhaled slowly. "I don't want to go." The words came out simpler than she'd meant them to. She seemed slightly surprised by herself. "I want to do this properly," she continued. "I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know if we're—" She stopped. "I don't know what we are." "We're her parents," he said. Immani blinked. "Whatever else gets figured out," Seo Jun said. "That part is already decided." She nodded slowly. Something that had been held tightly in her expression finally loosened. "Okay," she said. "Just that. Okay." He reached out and placed his hand briefly over hers on the kitchen counter. The same gesture he had made in the hospital room, the same warmth, the same groundedness. Then he let go. "Get some sleep," he said. "You should too." "Later." She looked at him for a moment, then moved toward the hallway. At the corner, she stopped. "Seo Jun." He looked at her. "She put your socks on because she already decided you were hers." A pause. "I want you to know that." He said nothing, but she saw what happened to his expression before he looked away. and she thought, that was enough for tonight. Morning came the way mornings did when nothing was chasing you anymore. Slowly, without alarm. Seo Jun was already in the kitchen when Zara appeared. She had returned to her own socks, but was wearing one of the spare sweaters from the hall closet, which came down to her knees. She stopped in the doorway and looked at him. "You're still here?" she said. "Yes." She seemed to process this with deliberate seriousness, as though confirming something she had expected but hadn't quite been willing to count on. "Are you staying today?" "Yes." "And tomorrow?" "Yes." She nodded slowly, accepting it the way she accepted everything, not with celebration, but with a kind of quiet satisfaction, as though the world had just confirmed something she'd suspected about it. She climbed onto the kitchen stool and watched him while he made breakfast, methodically, without fuss, in the particular way of someone who had been cooking for one for a very long time and was now recalibrating. "Can you make eggs?" she asked. "Yes." "Mommy burns them." "I know." Zara blinked. "How do you know?" He kept his attention on the pan. "Because she burns them the same way she burned them 5 years ago." A pause. "You knew Mommy before?" "Yes." "For a long time?" "Long enough." Zara rested her chin on her folded arms. "Did you love her?" He turned to look at her. No deflection, no discomfort. Just a 5-year-old asking a direct question because she was, he had come to understand, the most direct person he had ever met. "Yes," he said. "Do you still?" He turned back to the eggs. "Yes." Zara absorbed this with the equanimity of someone who had already suspected the answer. "Then you should tell her," she said. "She doesn't know everything that's in your head. You have to say it out loud." He was quiet for a moment. "That's very good advice." "I know." She watched the eggs. "Are those done?" "Almost." "I like them a little runny." "I know that too." She gave him a look that was part amusement, part assessment. "How?" "Because you're mine," he said simply. "I've been paying attention." Zara went very still. Then, without fanfare, she smiled. Not the small, careful smile she used for situations she was still measuring, but a real one, the kind that arrived before she could decide whether to allow it. "Okay," she said. The same word her mother had used the night before. The same weight, the same simplicity. He placed the eggs in front of her. She ate 3 bites and then said without looking up, "You're going to be my dad?" Not a question. He sat down across from her. "Yes," he said. "A real one, not just the kind that knows things." "Yes." She looked up at him then, and the steadiness in her gaze was the most familiar thing in the world to him, because it was his, given to someone else, showing up unchanged across 5 years he hadn't been there for. "Okay," she said again. And this time, the word meant something different. It meant, "I've decided. I'm not taking it back." Immani appeared in the kitchen a few minutes later. Her hair was down, her eyes still carrying the weight of the last 48 hours, but she was upright and present in the way she always was, not pretending to be fine, just choosing to keep moving. She stopped when she saw Zara eating, Seo Jun across from her, the kitchen smelling of eggs and coffee, and something that could only be called normalcy. "He made eggs," Zara announced. "The right way, not burned." Immani looked at Seo Jun. He lifted an eyebrow slightly. She sat down, and he poured her coffee without being asked. And the 3 of them were in the same kitchen in the same morning, and nobody said anything for a little while, because nothing needed to be said. Some things didn't announce themselves. They just arrived. He found Immani in the garden that afternoon, sitting in the light with nothing in her hands for once. No phone, no task, just sitting, which she had always done poorly, and which she seemed to be learning again. He sat beside her. Han Seok built the lie, he said. I should have told you in full last night. She turned to look at him. Tell me now. He did. All of it. The history between them, the falling out, the years of patience that had preceded what happened to her. He didn't soften it or frame it strategically. He told her the way he should have told her things years ago, when there had still been time for telling to prevent damage. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat quietly for a moment. He must have hated you very much, she said. Yes. And he used me to reach you. Yes. And Zara. Yes. She looked at the garden. She didn't know she was part of it? No, she was just a fact he found, something that could be used. But you found him before he used her. Yes. Because of her, Immani said. Because of the letter. Because she told you about the man. He nodded. Immani was quiet for a long moment. She protected us, she said softly. A 5-year-old. She was the one who... She stopped, shook her head. I spent 5 years trying to protect her. And in the end, it was the other way around. He said nothing. Because there was nothing truer she could have said. I want to apologize to you, she said. Properly. Not in the middle of a hospital room, not in pieces. I want to say it when you're actually listening. I'm listening. She turned to face him fully. I was wrong to leave without telling you. I was wrong to let fear make that decision. I was wrong to keep Zara from you. And I was wrong to believe what I was shown without asking you first. She held his gaze. None of it was malicious. All of it cost you something you can't get back. And I'm sorry. He looked at her for a long time. Thank you, he said. Not I forgive you, not it's fine. Not the easy erasure that would have felt like something but meant nothing. Thank you. She understood the difference. He could see it in her face. What do you need from me? She asked. Time, he said. And honesty. That's all. I can do that. I know you can. A pause. I still love you, he said. The words came out without performance. He didn't build toward them. He didn't frame them. He just said them. The way Zara had advised. Directly. Out loud. Because they were true, and they had been true for 8 months of silence. And apparently considerably longer than that. Immani looked at him. Then she said, I never stopped. 3 words, simple ones, the kind that rearranged the room. He reached out and took her hand. And she let him. And they stayed like that in the afternoon light without saying anything else for a while. Because some things, once said, didn't need to be said again. They just needed to be believed. That night, Zara could not decide between 2 books. She stood in the doorway of the main room, holding one in each hand, looking between her parents with the expression of a child who had identified a problem requiring adult consultation. I can't pick, she said. Immani looked up from the couch. Then pick the shorter one. Zara looked at Seo Jun. He looked at the 2 books. Read both. Zara considered this with appropriate seriousness. That will take a long time. Yes. You'll fall asleep. Probably. She seemed satisfied with the honesty and disappeared down the hallway with both books, her footsteps light and deliberate. Immani looked at him. You said probably. I might not. You absolutely will. Then I'll fall asleep, he said. I'll be there when she starts. Immani watched him for a moment. She's going to test every limit you have, she said. She'll ask the same question 7 different ways until she gets the answer she's looking for. She'll pretend she's asleep when she's not. She'll negotiate everything. I know. You don't know yet. I will, he said. I have time. The words settled in the room. I have time. For a man who had spent years building a life as if there was no one to build it for, those 3 words meant everything. Immani pulled her knees up onto the couch and looked toward the hallway. She already trusts you, she said quietly. She decided. When she decides, she doesn't go back. Neither do I, he said. The house was quiet. Outside, the grounds were still, the city invisible from here, the distance doing exactly what he had designed it to do. Inside, 2 books were being read in the wrong order by a 5-year-old who had already decided how the story ended. He stood. I'll go read to her. Immani nodded. He crossed the room, and in the doorway, he stopped. Immani? She looked up. When she asks me tomorrow why I wasn't there at the beginning, he said, I'm going to tell her the truth. She held his gaze. What truth? That I didn't know, and that if I had, nothing in the world would have kept me away. Immani was quiet for a moment. Then she said, That's the truth. Yes, he said. He walked down the hallway toward the light coming under Zara's door, toward the sound of a child who had waited 5 years for a person who didn't know she was waiting, and who had decided, with the certainty of someone far older than 5, that now that he was here, he was going to stay. And for the first time in a long time, Seo Jun was not thinking about what he had built, or what he had protected, or what he controlled. He was thinking about a girl in borrowed socks who already called him hers, about a woman who had burned eggs the same way for 20 years and kept a photograph in a blue leather bag she refused to let go of even while unconscious, about a house that had been waiting to be a home. He had spent years learning that power could build a life and control could protect it. But neither of those things, not one, could make it mean something. Only this could, and this was everything. 3 weeks later, Zara asked him a question he hadn't prepared for. They were in the study, her at the low table with a drawing she was working on with exhausting precision, him at the desk with a phone call he had just finished. She didn't look up when she spoke. She usually didn't, when the question mattered. Do you wish I was different? He looked at her. Different how? Like, easier. She added a careful line to her drawing. Some dads have easy kids. He set down the phone. Where did you hear that? She shrugged one small shoulder. A girl at school. She said her dad says she's the easiest kid he ever had, that she never asks complicated questions. She looked up at him then, and there was something very careful in her expression, something that was trying not to want a specific answer. Do you wish I was like that? Seo Jun crossed the room and sat down on the floor beside her table. She watched him come down to her level with an expression that tried to stay neutral and didn't quite manage it. No, he said. Why not? Because easy isn't the same as interesting. He looked at her drawing. It was detailed, carefully composed, a house with a garden and 3 figures in front of it, each one labelled in the slightly uneven letters of a child still learning to write. Mommy, me, Appa. And because if you were easy, you wouldn't have been you. She looked at the drawing too. I wrote Appa, she said. Is that okay? It was the first time she had said it. He had not pushed for it. He had not named himself anything to her. He had waited, because this was the one thing he understood should come from her entirely, on her timeline, without pressure from him. She was watching him now, that careful watch. Yes, he said. That's okay. Mommy says it means dad in Korean. It does. She taught me how to say it. A pause. She said I could decide when. He looked at the 3 figures in the drawing, the house with the garden, the labels in uneven letters. When did you decide? He asked. Zara thought about it seriously. When you came back from the city, she said. The first time, when you said you knew what you were leaving behind. She looked at him. I decided then. I just practiced saying it first. He looked at her for a long moment. How long did you practice? She held up 3 fingers. 3 days. I wanted to make sure it sounded right when I said it. Seo Jun looked away for a moment. Then he said, It sounded right. Zara appeared satisfied. She returned to her drawing, adding small, careful details to the garden. Flowers, and what appeared to be a bird, and a path between the figures and the front door. Upper, she said again, not as a question this time, just trying it. Yes, he said. She smiled at her drawing. He stayed on the floor beside her until the drawing was finished. The night before Immani's follow-up appointment at the hospital, the one that would confirm the concussion had healed cleanly, that the bruising had resolved, that all the monitoring had concluded what the doctors expected it to. She sat on the terrace and was quiet in a way that had a shape to it. Seo Jun sat beside her. You're thinking about leaving, he said. She turned to look at him quickly. Not... She stopped. Not the way you mean. Not leaving you. Not leaving here. A pause. I was thinking about going back to my apartment, to get our things properly, to close it out. I'll come with you. You don't have to. I know. She looked at him. It's just boxes and clothes and books. It's not... It's where she grew up, he said. I want to see it. Immani went still. It hadn't occurred to her, somehow, that he would want that the apartment she had built their life inside, the place where Zara had taken her first steps and spoken her first words and drawn her first pictures and learned to read, would matter to him not because of anything dangerous or strategic, but simply because it was his daughter's history, and he had none of it. And even a closed-out apartment was a kind of evidence. She drew on the wall in the hallway, Immani said quietly. I kept meaning to paint over it, and I never did. What did she draw? Stars. Very messy ones. She said they were a map. A map to what? Immani's mouth curved slightly. She said she didn't know yet. She was still figuring out the destination. He was quiet for a moment. Then we shouldn't paint over it, he said. Immani looked at him. Not yet, he said. Not until she knows where it leads. She looked at the garden below the terrace, at the dark grounds, at the lights of the city invisible behind the distance he had built into this place. She told me you came and sat on the floor with her today, she said. Yes. She called you Appa. He said nothing. She told me she'd been practicing, Immani said. 3 days. She timed it for when she was sure. She paused. She's so careful about the things that matter. She gets it from you. Immani shook her head slowly. She gets that part from you. The stillness. The way she decides things and doesn't go back. She looked at him. I've been watching you with her for 3 weeks. The way you are with her. You've never had to think about it. It was just there. He looked at his hands. I've thought about it every day, he said. I don't mean the thinking, I mean the instinct. She turned to face him more fully. You sat on the floor today. You asked her questions like her answers mattered. You didn't perform anything. A pause. That's not something you decide to do. It's something you are. He held her gaze. I missed 5 years, he said. I know. There are things about her I'm still learning. I know. She knows things about herself that I don't know yet. Things I'll find out slowly. Yes. He looked at her steadily. I need you to tell me. Whatever you know that I don't. What she was afraid of at 3, what she said at 2, what she looked like when she first... He stopped. I know I can't get them back, but I want to know about them. Immani's eyes filled. I have photos, she said. Videos. I have a box I kept. Every drawing, every report from school, every funny thing she said that I wrote down before I could forget it. She wiped her eyes quickly. I kept it because I always knew I would have to give it to you someday. I just kept telling myself someday was later. Show me, he said. All of it? Everything. She nodded once, then twice, as if confirming something to herself. Okay, she said. He reached out and took her hand, the same way he had the night before, and the night before that, steadily and without declaration, the way he intended to keep doing it. I'm not trying to go back, he said. I know we can't. I know. But I'm going to be here for the rest of it. All of it. Whatever that looks like. Immani turned her hand over and held his properly. I believe you, she said. The words were simple, and they were true, and they meant more to him than any agreement he had ever reached, than any negotiation he had ever won, than any protection he had ever put in place. Because all of those things had been built for a life with no one in it. And now there was someone. 2 someones. Both of them asleep inside, in a house that was finally becoming what it had been designed for all along. The drive to the apartment happened on a Tuesday morning. Zara came with them because she had declared it her mission to supervise the packing and ensure that nothing important got left behind. She had a list. She had written it herself, in the careful letters she was still perfecting, and she held it in both hands as they drove. The crayons, she read, the blue blanket, the plant. The plant is dead, Immani said. Zara looked up. Which one? The one in the kitchen, the tall one. Zara considered this gravely. Can we bring it anyway? Immani glanced in the rear view. It's dead, love. It might come back. Immani looked at Seo Jun. He kept his gaze forward but said, We'll bring the pot. Zara seemed satisfied with this. She returned to her list. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building in a quieter part of the city. Not expensive, not stark. The kind of place you chose because it was manageable and safe-feeling and close enough to a school that mattered. Seo Jun walked through it slowly, taking it in. Small kitchen. Warm light. A couch with a blanket still folded over one arm. A child's drawings pinned above the desk where Immani worked. A shelf of books arranged by something other than alphabetical order, organized in a system he didn't immediately understand. And in the hallway, just where Immani had described, a cluster of hand-drawn stars, messy and confident, covering a patch of wall at child height. He stopped there. He stood looking at the stars for a long moment. Zara appeared beside him. That's my map, she said. I know. She looked at it. I was going to add more, but Mommy said I had to stop at some point. Boundaries are important? That's what she said. She pointed to one of the larger stars near the center. That one's the most important. That's the one that shows where you're supposed to end up. He looked at the star, roughly drawn, larger than the others, with an extra line added to one side that gave it an uneven shape. How do you know which direction that is? he asked. Zara looked at him with the expression of someone who found the question slightly unnecessary. You just follow it, she said. And when you get there, you know. He looked at the star. Then he said, I think I found it. Zara looked up at him. Yeah, she said. Me too. She took his hand and led him back toward the kitchen, where Immani was already wrapping things carefully in newspaper, because she had always been the kind of person who wrapped things carefully, and some things didn't change. They packed the apartment together over the course of a morning, the three of them, boxes and bags and things that needed decisions made about them, and a dead plant in a pot that was coming home with them regardless. When the apartment was empty, Immani stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a moment. Seo Jun stood beside her. Neither of them said anything. The room was bare now, and in its bareness it looked both smaller and larger than it had. The last 5 years had happened in these walls. The decisions, the fear, the love that had continued in his absence. All of it had existed here. Thank you, he said. She looked at him. For what? For keeping her safe. For everything you did alone that you shouldn't have had to do alone. He paused. For keeping the picture? She looked away. Her jaw tightened once. The blue bag was always heavy, she said, but I couldn't leave it. I know. She took one last look at the room. Then she turned away from it and walked toward the door, and didn't look back. That evening, back at the estate, Zara supervised the placement of the dead plant on the kitchen windowsill. It needs light, she said, and water, and someone to talk to it. Plants don't respond to conversation, Immani said. Zara looked at her with patient certainty. You talk to me, and I respond. You're not a plant. But I grew. She arranged the pot slightly to the left. Same idea. Seo Jun looked at Immani. Immani covered her mouth with her hand. Fine, she said. We'll talk to the plant. I'll make a schedule, Zara said, and went to find paper. When she was gone, Immani finally let herself laugh, quietly, into her hand, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deeper than amusement. Seo Jun watched her. She's going to be extraordinary, he said. She already is. Yes. He looked toward where Zara had disappeared. But she's going to be more. Immani looked at him. You're going to let her be? Yes. Even when she's difficult. Especially then. She studied him for a moment. You mean that? Every word. She nodded slowly, and something in her settled, a last remnant of the guard that had been dropping piece by piece over the past 3 weeks, finally choosing to release. So do I, she said. They stood in the kitchen of the house that had been waiting for them, beside a dead plant that might come back with enough care, listening to the sound of a 5-year-old making a watering schedule with the seriousness of someone filing a legal document. And Seo Jun understood, fully, what he had built this house for. Not safety, not control. Not the version of a life that could withstand everything. He had built it for exactly this, for ordinary mornings and impractical decisions, and people who loved each other imperfectly and showed up anyway, for a daughter who drew star maps and wore borrowed socks and called him Appa after 3 days of practice, for a woman who burned eggs and kept photographs and carried a blue leather bag through an accident that was designed to take her and wouldn't let go of it even when she lost consciousness, for a life that had been waiting for a very long time, for him to stop managing it and start living it. He had spent years learning that power could build a life and control could protect it. But neither of those things, not one, could make it mean something. Only this could. And this was everything.